of heroes in here. We got Emilio in Tennessee. We got Jacob in Wisconsin. We got Tim in Green Bay. And we got a special guest tonight from Basaraski Productions, Baz himself, the man, the myth, the legend. I just want to say this about this guy, man. When we first started doing the show, he's been someone who's been willing to help me out from day one. Got nothing but respect for him. And if you guys aren't following his latest mock drafts, he's been ripping it up. Learned a ton over there watching the channel. Baz, how you been doing, big dog?
I'm good, Clayton. Thanks for having me. I appreciate all the kind words. Draft season. It's crazy to hear someone say they learn a lot from me in the draft because I'm still learning myself. And it's just like, dude, every week it's learning new prospects, learning what Brian Gutekunst may be doing. And it's hard. It's very hard to try to predict, but I did a decent job last year doing it, but that means I'll probably get zero correct this year, but we're trying out here.
Hey, man, that's the reason you're so good at what you do is because what you just said. We're all still learning. Yeah. The people that think they're arrived and they know what they're doing, they don't have a damn clue what they're doing. That's the fact. So let's just do this, man. We'll get you out of here quick. I know you got a busy schedule. I just wanted to pick your brain on the draft a little bit. Why don't we start in the first round and just, with pick 23, what's the first thing that comes to mind for you? Because they could go in a multitude of directions. Obviously, they've already met with like Shamar Stewart, Michael Williams, guys like that. We're kind of excited about Jahdae Barron. That's a dude we're a little bit excited about. Now, some see him just as a slot. We see him as someone that might be versatile enough to play on the outside. With that being said, what would you like to see happen with the 23rd pick, and maybe what do you think will happen at this point?
I'm glad you touched up on Jahdae because I agree. I'm with you guys there. I know a lot of people in Packers fear like this guy's just a slot. I don't think sure he could play some of his best football there. But you see the versatility. I like him as a cornerback, but I don't like to be this kind of person to be like, oh, this person's not going to be available, but I truly don't think he will. He could go before Will Johnson, right? Like there could be a scenario where Will Johnson falls to 19-20 if the Packers are going to trade up. But I think the resounding, what we've heard from Brian Gutekunst has been he wants to get more draft picks. So I think it would be very funny if the Packers traded out of the first round for the first draft in Green Bay. I just feel like that would be such a Brian Gutekunst thing to do. Shamar Stewart, someone I also like. I'm glad you mentioned him. I know it's either side for Packers fans. It's like, I hate this guy, zero production, but I think when you put on the film and you see what he's tasked with over there on that Aggie defense, it's a little bit different. And I like him as an athlete, and it's not a Packers draft if you're not looking at guys that are extreme athletes that are young with not much production, as you had mentioned, Michael Williams as well. And that's a Georgia defender at that. So that's another guy that you could definitely tie to the Green Bay Packers. But, what we also heard from Brian Gutekunst is, it seems he's very happy or at least content with his edge room. I know a lot of us don't like to hear that. Now, if he's just throwing smoke out there, that could definitely be the case as well. Gutekunst isn't the one that put his, show his hand. But it seems like they just kind of hated Jason Rebrovich, and they're kind of like, all right, let's move on from that. We got Covington in the building. Lucas Van Ness is going to take a next step, which I think we all hope he does. Brenton Cox Jr. actually, took a massive step up later last season. I think a lot of people are kind of underrating him a bit there, and I think he could become something pretty special for this team. But I still think edge is on the board. But where I think where my eggs would be in my basket would be, defensive line. I really think defensive line because, Kenny Clark didn't really get what we wanted out of him last year per se. TJ Slayton left to the Cincinnati Bengals. Carl Brooks is a guy that I think has a ton of potential. I think Colby Wooden's expendable. And when you lose TJ Slayton, who played a decent amount of snaps, kind of that middle of the defensive line guy to help against the run, there are definitely a lot of options in this draft class. Kenneth Grant definitely comes to mind in that first round. Derek Harmon's a guy out of Oregon I really, really like. I see you have that board up here now. I'm just realizing that. But yeah, Derek Harmon, Kenneth Grant are probably my two guys in the first round in terms of defensive line. I haven't really dove much into Darius Alexander, Tyleik Williams, but Walter Nolan's one I'm not too crazy on. And then of course, Mason Graham, you're not gonna see him at all for sure for the Packers. But I would say defensive line would be right now my early prediction. Again, we still got a few weeks left, so I'm sure that's going to change. We'll see. I know some people are like, oh, the Packers are going to end up with a tackle like Kelvin Banks, but I don't know. It just seems like they're really, really pushing this Jordan Morgan thing to tackle. And it's like they're going to give him the opportunity with Rasheed Walker. So I don't know. It's right now, Right now, it does really feel like it's going to be defensive line because I feel like they're comfortable with what they have in edge, not saying they're not going to draft any. And it all seems like they're more comfortable than a lot of us believe at cornerback. And we saw that thing with Jair today working out with McKinney. So who knows if he's back, right? And if he's back, this whole outlook changes. Like you don't target cornerback that early. But yeah, I'm going to go D-line. And if I were to guess it at 23, it's probably going to be Derek Harmon.
I like it. And obviously his specialty is pass rush, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned that too, because like when you look at edge defender and people are reading the tea leaves, like, man, the top 30 visits, they're really focusing on edge. That means they're going edge in the first round. If you look at the guys they're looking at, Shamar Stewart, James Pierce Jr., those guys, there's a good chance they're going to be gone by the time the Packers pick. And to me, it makes me think they know what they've got in the defensive tackle room. Not that they won't schedule top 30 visits, but if those edge guys fall, they want to make sure they're prepared. Like, hey, these guys are higher on our board, but we did our due diligence. We know exactly what we got. Are they going to be a fit, that type of thing? As opposed to defensive tackle, like you may be looking, just like you said, Kenneth Grant, Derek Harmon, Walter Nolan, maybe Tyleik Williams, Alfred Collins. They met with Alfred Collins. Maybe they see him as a good enough pick to be at 23 too. Or maybe they're looking to trade back. But we've been on that defensive tackle thing the whole time as well, because Kenny aging, the cap number blimps next year. Devontae Wyatt, his pass rush is strong. We got him for another year probably. I think they may pick up the fifth-year option or look to extend him the way Goody talked about him being the most consistent pass rusher on the interior. And then you look to maybe separate from Kenny if you draft that true defensive tackle of the future. You can kind of move on from that contract next year, free up a bunch of cap, and you got the next guy in house. So we're definitely on board there. Let me ask you this. In the second round, what do you think in the second round? Because we've talked about a lot of guys. We talked about wide receivers. We talked about corners. I don't want to steal your thunder. There's a multitude of players really that pop up at that 54th pick that we go, boy, we would love to have those guys. What's your take on pick 54?
So I love diving down into wide receivers. It's my favorite position to break down. And I feel like at 54, I don't think, even though Higgins is consensus 52, I just feel like a team's going to go up and grab Jaden Higgins. And if that could be the Packers trading up. We did it with Christian Watson a few years ago where, you trade up early in the second round, get your wide receiver. But at 54, man, it's going to be Trey Harris. He's my favorite receiver in this class in terms of like value where you can get this guy. I'm really, really high on Trey Harris and what I think he could bring to the Green Bay Packers. When you look at Harris, not the fastest guy per se. And I know we kind of need, more of a take the top off a defense guy. I think you can get that later in the draft. But what really intrigues me about Trey Harris is his ability to just be that pure like X guy, right? And I know it doesn't really exist too much in today's NFL. You always got cheat motions. You got guys moving around all the place, right? But with Trey, man, it's 3 straight seasons of great production and in my opinion, a boring offense. Like when I went back and watched the Ole Miss tape, I'm just like, dude, this is so boring. That's why I'm not really high on Jackson Dart, because I'm just watching it. I'm just like, But when he did make the splash plays, you're like, all right, here we are, right? Yeah. And with him, it's just, you see his talent versus man coverage. And I know it's a smaller sample size, but that's not his fault, right? But when you see the reps versus man coverage, I mean, he went off. And like I said, with a boring offense that runs a lot of RPO, he still averaged 17.2 yards per catch this last season. Like I said, he's not a guy that is going to burn by you by any means, but he's a guy that's going to be able to box you out. He's going to be able to go up and win a contested catch. He's going to be able to beat one-on-one coverage. And those are things the Packers really struggled with last year, especially against man coverage. When you remove Christian Watson out of the equation, he was like our one guy that could beat man coverage when you look at the advanced analytics. So Trey Harris, definitely my favorite guy at wide receiver, and probably the route I want the Packers to go in the second round. But I'm interested your guys' thoughts on wide receivers as well. But that's my guy. Yeah,
so Trey Harris is one that's been on our radar a lot. Jaden Higgins as well. Like you said, man, I could see Jaden Higgins kind of rising up boards. With Trey Harris, it's funny. You hear pro scouts or people that were formerly scouts like DJ and some of the other guys, Bucky Brooks. The one worry you have with Jackson Dart and even the receivers is like, it felt like Lane Kiffin already had the decision made pre-snap. Like, hey, here's where we're going with the football. Yeah. Now, obviously, Jackson Dart seemed to have impressed at his pro day, kind of taking command and orchestrating pretty much everything on the field. And then it was cool. They said that they opened it up too. They paused the pro day, looked up in the stands and asked the coaches, everybody in attendance from the NFL, what do y'all want to see now? Like taking requests. So that helps a lot. But yeah, with Trey Harris beating man coverage. What was his man coverage grade? Do you guys remember?
95 is the highest coming out of this class. And again, it's a smaller sample size when you look into it. It's I forget how many exact reps it is, but it's a smaller sample size. But that's not his fault. Like if a team doesn't play as much man coverage against your offense, like you do with what the reps that you have. But yeah, it's the highest out of the class.
Got it. What about corner? How do you feel about cornerback, man?
Oh man, I guess we can all just kind of wait and see with the whole Jair thing. I'm on the board of them moving on from Jair. Not saying I necessarily think that's their best option. I just think that's what I think they're gonna do, just based off of salary, based off of playability, all of that. Signing Hobbs this offseason, I don't really know what they're going to do with him. Like, to me, I think he's capable outside, but, I think his best ball is going to be in the nickel. But then you have a guy like Javon Bullard there. So corner is an interesting one, but I think at the end of the day, we need depth at outside cornerback. I think that's definitely what has to happen, whether they keep Jair, whether they move on from Jair. Even if they keep Jair, I'm sure they're still going to, want depth at that cornerback spot because, hey, he hasn't been available. And some options I really like, Will Johnson falls. I guess you could go up and grab that guy, but Siobhan Ravel's an interesting one for me because, you see the potential there, but it's really only like one season that, you saw too much. You had 3 games this last season due to the injury. But the season before that, you saw it there, right? Trey Amos is someone that I really like because a lot of these cornerbacks, when you're looking into them, such as Siobhan Ravel, like I mentioned, Will Johnson, Benjamin Morrison, you're all like talking about them and going, all right, they have all of these great things, but right. And you always have like a rebuttal at the end of it. But Trey Amos doesn't really, I mean, every player has their negatives for sure. But Trey Amos to me is the one guy that, it just kind of all fits for the Packers there. I was doing my chart today because I do like a whole Google Doc where I go over the Packers thresholds and stuff, try to predict what the Packers are looking at, which is very, very difficult, as I mentioned. But with Trey Amos, he's the only corner in terms of Packers threshold fit that have good man coverage grade, good zone coverage grade, good run defense grade, and had some, ball production this past season. He's the only one with all 4 of those categories. So that's like a 70+0 man coverage grade, 70+ zone, and then good run defense grade, and at least like 3 interceptions and a sub 70 quarterback rating allowed. He's the only one that I have. But there's other options. If the Packers don't go cornerback too early, say in the middle round, Zoff Frazier is definitely a guy that's very, very intriguing. That kind of feels like a Packers guy just due to like the extreme athletic profile, 9.28 RAS, 6'3", a little bit on the lighter side, 186, which I know the Packers usually like their corners about like 195. But he allowed a really low passer rating this past season. Zoff, I know it's against lesser competition, but 35.9 passer rating allowed at 6 interceptions, good run defense grade. I think he's projected like the 4th or 5th round. Another guy that's interesting that feels like could be Packers are looking at is obviously Darian Porter, just due to the athletic profile, but he didn't play much football, right? Like he hasn't been I think he only had 1 season starting this last season. Outside of that, hasn't played too much, but you see the profile there, 6'3", 195 pounds, 9.99 RAS, ran, had a passer rating allowed of 4.7 this past season with 3 interceptions, but I know he's pretty poor against the run. He had pretty poor run defense grade, but those are some of the corners I like. Some later ones. Mac McWilliams is interesting. I don't know if you guys consider him a safety. I think he can play, both inside, outside, maybe even some safety. But I'm just starting to really like dive down into like the later round cornerbacks right now. I think on mock draft database he is listed as a safety, so that's why you're probably not finding him there. So I guess it really just depends where you see him. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on corner. I think there are a few guys I like. Oh, Noel Williams is another one. Noel Williams is definitely another one out of Cal. Yeah. A ton of ball productions. I think it's 7 interceptions this past season. Right. Doesn't like fit that Packers threshold, but like he's not like quite there yet. A little bit like a lower of an athlete. I think he had Noel Williams. Do I have him on here? Yeah, he had a 7.01 RAS. So he ran a 4.5 40. His vertical is a little low at 33.5, 6 foot 199. So he fits the height weight. Noel Williams, outside guy, 7 interceptions. I really like him, but I'm worried the Packers like kind of maybe don't have him as high on their board.
We all are, man.
Yeah.
We like, that's what we think.
I feel like there's a corner every draft where you go, this guy has a ton of production. Like I love him for the Packers. Then you look up some of the threshold stuff and you're like, ugh. You're like, okay, maybe not. Maybe they won't go with that guy. But Noel Williams is definitely that guy for me this year. But yeah, that's how I feel on corner.
Got it, man. Good stuff. Well, before we let you go, is there a prospect that you go, man, late in the draft? It doesn't have to be a specific position. Just what's the first person that comes to mind that you go, man, I really think people might be sleeping on this guy? Do you have like one of those favorite late round guys that come to mind no matter what the position?
It's gonna be I like wide receiver. Like I said, it's the one thing I like breaking down the film the most, and it's gonna be Elijah Badger out of Florida.
We've been talking about him, Baz.
Really?
The drop percentage,
no drops
against man coverage.
Yeah. He was a dog at ASU even, and a lot of people like a couple of years ago had like a not mock draft, but like board, and he was very high on some of those boards, like prospect 70, 80, 90, right? And if they had any bit of consistency at quarterback, man, he's 1,100 yard receiver, and we're talking about him in the second round. Like I fully believe they're rotating quarterbacks. They're doing the old Wisconsin Badger. I don't know if you guys remember the Tanner McAvoy days and all that. I don't even know what they're doing over there, but Elijah Badger's interesting. I think both those guys coming out, Shamir DK and Elijah Badger, honestly, I think are going to be decent prospects at that wide receiver position. But you see Badger, man, the contested catch rates up at like 68.8%, grade versus man coverage 88.5, 0 drops this past season. We all want more of 0 drops from our receivers this next season for sure. So he's a guy I really like, is Elijah Badger. He's definitely my like sleeper guy, and if team ends up with him in the 7th round, I think it's gonna be a steal.
Got it. Yeah, when I seen the 0% drop percentage, I'm like, that's got to be a typo. I mean, you go back and check, like,
yeah,
I'm pretty sure he didn't drop a pass all year. It's pretty wild. So, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Baz, it's so good to catch up with you, man. Like, we can't thank you enough for dropping in, bro. I want to respect your time here, and we'll let you get out. But, man, if there's anything we can ever do for you, let us know, dude. For sure.
Dude, for sure. I really appreciate you guys for having me on. I love talking draft because that's honestly, like, outside of, I'd say watching the Packers on Sunday, draft is definitely my favorite time of the year. Definitely my favorite time of the year.
Can I ask Baz one question?
Yeah, go for it, guys. I got time.
What do you think about Torrey Horton?
I like Torrey Horton. Torrey Horton. He's a guy, was it like 4th round projection, right? Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
He's another guy like a receiver where, a lot of the receivers the Packers have drafted, they kind of either had a down or injured year the past season that they're getting drafted in, but then the year before that you look at and you're like, oh, okay, you see it there. So Horton, I think, had, was that 9.79 RIS, 4.41 40, 6'2", 196 pounds. And if you look back at 2023, his grade versus man coverage is pretty high, 76.4, very, very low drop rate at 4.8%. He can also run block. He had right around a 70.0 run block grade there. So he's a guy that I definitely do like in the 4th round. I watched some of his film over there at Colorado State, and he's a guy I do like.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Yeah, it looks like the latest mocks have him 3rd to 4th round. I'd be
3rd to 4th. Yeah, sure. That makes sense. Like 120. Hey, if we could get Torrey Horton at 124, I'm cool with that.
Absolutely, man. Well, bro, it's good catching up, dude. If there's anything we can do, like I said, let us know, man. We'll be watching the channel as always. You're killing it. Absolutely crushing it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, guys. All right, guys. Appreciate it.
Man. Appreciate it, man. All right, that was Baz from Basaraski Production, one of the best YouTube channels.
There's no way they're not following Baz and following us. There's just no way.
He didn't hop on for promotion, I promise.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
If anything, you probably lost a couple.